Hello.
All right, we have the Munsters represented and the Addams Family represented.
I don't know why they haven't done this before. It's such a natural.
Here we are. Let's start with Butch. When you were on the Munsters, doing the Munsters, did you ever look at the competition? Did you see the Addams Family back in the day?
Of course, I was familiar with the Addams Family all the way back to the comic strip in the New Yorker. It was really interesting at that time. They were both very popular, you know, and had we been head-to-head on the same night on different networks, it would have been a problem. But they were Friday night, we were Thursday night, and we complimented each other. And whether you liked one or the other more, you watched us both. So we really helped each other's existence.
I was there, I think I was 6 or 7 years old for the 2 seasons. Did your dad ever talk about the Munsters?
Never. I am sorry to say. And to be honest, he didn't really even talk about the Addams Family that much. You know, quickly, Dad had kind of a love-hate relationship with the character and the production because he was a trained actor. He is Shakespeare. He wanted to be Cyrano de Bergerac. And here he was, you know, you mentioned the comic strip in the New Yorker. Lurch didn't have a name, and he didn't have any words or lines. Dad called him a lamppost. And so he was, you know, being recruited to play a lamppost. It didn't thrill him. And so that's why in the audition, he wasn't given any lines, but when they pulled the rope and he came in and he said, "You rang," the place just broke up, and they gave him lines, they gave him stories, the whole thing changed on that. But he wanted to be a serious, interestingly, I don't want to take all the time here, but it just leads into this idea. Dad wanted to be an actor, and he was. And so when he practiced, you know, he played Thing in the Addams Family as well, the hand. And he would be at home in front of a mirror, my sister and I remember, practicing ways to make a hand an actor, to emote, to express. And he loved that because it had nothing to do with his height. So there you go.
And what about similarities and differences? What do you think?
Well, you know, it's just listening to Sean. Fred Gwynn had an issue being Herman Munster, somewhat caused him, limited his acting career. He was a fine actor as well, when, you know, people Broadway and this and that. And the more I think about it, in the 60s, several actors that were on very successful shows kind of got pigeonholed, I guess, or cast. Look at Max Baer from the Beverly Hillbillies, Jethro.
Bob Denver.
Bob Denver. I mean, sometimes it was being a really good actor and being on a comedy series that was so successful sort of hindered your career. And honestly, I was friends with all the rest of the cast except Fred, not because we didn't like each other, but he didn't want to be around anybody from the show because he didn't want to give people a reason to bring up the Munsters other. You know, and he was trying to avoid it. So if I was with him, obviously the common bond would be the Munsters. So he shied away from Al Lewis. He shied away from Yvonne DiCarlo. He went on to do his own career. But it was interesting how a lot of people on successful shows, big people, two big guys, you know, Max and Ted and Fred, seem to have some issues with that, unfortunately.
Butch, I didn't know that, and that makes so much sense because that describes Dad exactly. And I wanted to say, as long as you brought up Bob Denver, last year in Lurch Fest, which is 2 hours away in Philippi, West Virginia here, Dreama Denver, his widow, was with us. And she reminded me, and I kind of remember this, having watched the Many Lives of Dobie Gillis, that actually Maynard Krebs was the first one to say, "You rang." Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Something would happen, he would come, he said it differently. That's why when Dad did it, it became his iconic line. But Bob Denver was actually the first to come up with this.
Real quickly, did your dad ever say you rang at home?
No. Like I said, he did not embrace Lurch in a warm, fuzzy way. So.
Okay, we want to do some questions for either of these two or both of them. Wow.
I got one.
Okay, Kevin.
Butch, can you tell the crowd a little bit about the Monkeys Christmas episode that you were part of?
Yeah, I worked from 1960 to 1974 was my little window in Hollywood, and it was a great 14 years because it was, black and white was still going through the mid 60s, and it switched over, so I saw the transition to that. And right about that time, I was in the 8th grade, and I got an audition. The first thing about when I would work, I never told anybody at school what I was doing because I really tried to avoid the acting thing as much as I could to my peers. But when I got the Monkees Christmas episode, everybody in school knew that I was going to be spending a week with the Monkees. They were like gods at that time to a teenage kid. But what I really, really enjoyed about the show was not only was it a good episode for me because I was the lead, they were hired to babysit me, so I was in a lot of scenes with them. I was pretty much in every scene. But at the end of the show, they have this very nice little, they sing a cappella Rio Chiu, and then they go to the audience and they break down the fourth wall and they introduce everybody from behind the cameras. And what I loved about it was it really showed the energy level that they had, the friendliness, the spontaneity, the kindness. They were just wonderful guys on top of the world, and they shared it, and it was a joy. I've been on a lot of TV shows before then, and this was definitely the most fun set and the most fun you could ever have working with these guys. And it was nice that they sort of showed the world and they shared it, how lucky they were with everybody that was working for it. And it was just a fun place, and I consider that to be probably my favorite guest starring role outside the Munsters.
Now, outside of the Addams Family, your dad seemed to break out of stereotype by doing a lot of voice work. Even though he did Addams Family cartoons, he was the voice.
That was his bread and butter.
Lots of stuff.
Was the voiceover. He did a lot of cartoons, a lot of commercials, documentaries, that kind of thing. Tell you an interesting story. I was with him in the car on the way to a sound studio where they just do voiceover, and he was auditioning for a National Schlitz beer commercial. And he already had a National Goodyear commercial, which paid a lot of bills. That was a really good gig. And I remember him saying to me in the car on the way over, if I get this, I won't have to work again. He said, I will want to, it's not that I'm gonna quit, but this will just do it. So we get in there and he starts, and he had just, like a month or two earlier, quit smoking. And I don't know if any of you went through that, but your voice goes through a change. And so while he's there trying to do the voice, there's a little phlegm and it crackles a little bit, and I see him clearing his voice, and he's trying to get it going, and I can see he's frustrated. And finally he just says, just a minute, and he gets up and walks in the hall, and I go with him, and he's out there really mad, like stamping his foot, and he blows through 2 cigarettes, and it just smoothed his voice and nailed that audition. The director who was there said, you're the one. Of course, he wasn't the producer, and I don't know if you guys know who Paul Frees is, but he was he was the top of the mountain in those days, and Frees actually got the campaign. Dad had a wonderful career in voiceover, and it has to do with what I mentioned earlier. It had nothing to do with height. He would sit at a table with other creative people and just have the best time, right? They'd sit there in pajamas sometimes. It was really fun.
Wow. Now, Butch, you didn't run into too much, at least, well, you'll know better than me, but stereotyping, because you still did a lot of stuff shortly after the Munsters.
Well, the term typecasting pops up, and sometimes I'll do interviews and they'll say, you ever feel you were typecast? Well, if I was walking around with a widow's peak and in short velvet shorts, carrying a wolf, yes, that would be typecast.
You brought those, didn't you?
Yeah, no. But what's good about, as a kid in Hollywood, is you're changing a lot. Every 2 years, you usually get new pictures. Especially, you're growing and your voice is changing. So I continued to work. I was lucky. But I also wasn't walking around in makeup. So right after the Munsters, I went over and started doing guest starring roles over at Disney, which for a kid was the gold standard, working a couple years at Disney Studios. And then a lot of guest starring roles and this and that. But as a kid, the hard part for a kid is getting through late teens to early 20s. Because it's almost like a cliff that a lot of people drop off of. I never was an actor. I was a kid who could act. I never planned on working past 20. So for me, it was great. As soon as I was 18, 19 years old, I didn't have to go to Vietnam because I had a 1H deferment for my knee. and everything was good. So I just went one way, and Hollywood went the other way, and I never looked back.
Yeah, you were great in the Saturday morning stuff, I guess.
Lidsville, sure. Saturday morning. Sid Marty Crawford, Sid passed recently, one of the nicest guys in the world, and I actually didn't really want to do Lidsville, and it turned out to be the best payday of my life. And I grew into liking it, even kind of like Fred Gwynn didn't like Herman Munster. At the end of his life, he kind of went full circle and went back to appreciate the work that he had done. That's how I felt about Lidsville now.
Okay, questions from the audience?
I
Go ahead.
have a question for Butch. I think we mentioned this earlier. One thing we have in common, I was not an actor, of course, but I was a kid on the set of the Addams Family, and Lisa Loring and Ken Weatherwax were there too, and they were kind of friends, and we did stuff. Lisa came over to the house a few times and played with my sister, and Ken and I used to skateboard around the studio lot. Real quickly, what was so great about it, there was security when you came into the lot, but after that, there wasn't much. We would wander into other sound stages. Beverly Hillbillies was across over here, and Mr. Ed was across the alley. We walked in there. The flip side is, we didn't mess with anything. It was the way the era was. So what I'm curious is, how was it to be a kid on that set? I know you were an actor, but you were also a kid. And I kind of, shared that thing.
Well, people ask me, what's your favorite memory of the Munsters? And I told them, like, when my book was done, it was the Munster Memories. They asked me, what was my memory? I said, the Munsters was my job, but what I really, really enjoyed when I knew I had a few hours to kill was wandering around Universal Studios and checking out all the other movies, because we were mostly a movie studio. We had a few Westerns, we had McHale's Navy and the Munsters and Alfred Hitchcock, but we were mostly 10 to 15 features going at any given day. And being an actor, I knew how to open the door and not cause it disruption, and being able to tiptoe around and see stuff. So for me, as a kid, little boys especially like to go exploring. Well, imagine having this incredible studio at your disposal. And of course, my favorite soundstage was Stage 28, which was the largest soundstage in the world, where they did Phantom of the Opera, where you're not supposed to go up 6 stories into the catwalks, and what do? That's the first place you go.
Well, I noticed one thing Butch did not mention, and I'll bet is part of this, is the donut cart.
What?
There was a donut cart on the
Oh,
stage.
the Roach
wasn't
Coach.
there?
The Roach Coach.
So my sister and I would hang out in Dad's dressing room, and maybe there still are, I haven't been on one forever. They used to have the red lights there, and once they were on, everybody's quiet, don't move around, we're filming. So we would hide out in Dad's dressing room and stare at that red light. And when it came on, we creeped out, we get our bounty of donuts and get back. And I remember there was one time you could hear the director go, "Cut! What was that?" And I'm sure it wasn't us.
Yeah.
Great. We had a question right there in the back.
I wanted to ask Sean, did your dad have any memories with Paul Newman and the Butch Cassidy and Sundance?
All right. It's one of my best stories. Thank you. I'll pay you later. He was the kick scene, right, with Paul Newman.
Oh, yeah.
So they were in Utah for that, and Dad wrote me a letter. I was in the 6th grade or something like that, and he told me, what was coming up in the script, and they were concerned about it. But he and Paul got together, and they're both professionals. And they decided, all right, we're gonna, make this look real. How are we gonna do this? So what they did was, they taped a pillow the inside of his thigh, Dad's thigh, and the plan was that Paul would kick him, land it there, and it would still hurt and do whatever, but at least it would absorb some of it. Well, Paul missed and hit Dad straight on, and he wrote, "That look on my face is real." And no, we're not doing a second take. I hope you got that. So anyway, he loved work. I'm not sure he loved the part again of Harvey Logan, kind of another one of the big luggish guys in a way. But it was his favorite production to be a part of, with Newman and Redford and George Roy Hill, and just the professionalism and the A-lister thing going on. He loved that. There's a picture of him I have, the best smile on his face I've ever seen during that production.
That was a kick felt around the world.
Yes, it was.
More right here, question.
Butch, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about Eddie's House of Monsters.
Any what?
Eddie's House of Monsters in Indiana Beach.
Oh, Monsters?
Yeah. Indiana Beach?
Oh, Indiana Beach, Kern. I thought we were talking about the Munster. Okay. Yeah, Universal Studio was the monster studio back in the 30s. They introduced Frankenstein in 31, and I was lucky enough to be out there and wander around and reminisce. And I always had a thing for the original Aurora models when I was a kid, building those. So I had this idea when I was working with this gentleman, Tom Devlin, who many of you probably do know. He has the Monster Museum out in Boulder City, Nevada. So I had this idea to make a walkthrough in his kind of an interesting interactive history of the Universal Monsters and how that set the foundation for horror in Hollywood, which then led to everything else that's gone through the last 80 years to today. And it's open at Indiana Beach as a theme park celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And I'm really proud of it. Everybody loves it. It's great. We're going to hopefully open them up around the country, but it's a Universal monster history, which I was lucky enough to be around, and the Munsters obviously were an offshoot of the original Universal Monsters. So if you get a chance, check it out. You YouTube it, you can find out. It's called Eddie's House of Monsters.
That's so cool. And you mentioned you built the Aurora monster models when you were a kid. You're one of us.
I have all of
Were
yours.
you aware of those, Sean? The monster models? Did you ever build those?
I didn't build models, but I had their plastic statuettes, basically, of all the Universal Monsters.
Yeah.
I think an orange mummy was my favorite.
Yeah. I remember the plastic figures. Okay. Yeah. Right here.
If I may, a question for both these guys. Sean, I'll start with you. Did the Tim Burton people reach out to you with Wednesday?
Why did they not? I'm serious. I don't understand why they haven't.
Okay, sorry about that. What's your opinion? Have you seen the show? What do you think of it?
Butch, you want to answer that? I'll pass.
Okay, fair enough. I don't want to put you on the spot. And Butch, if you don't mind me asking, how did Edward Herman measure up to Fred?
Edward he was the best Herman Munster. And the fact that we did that cameo, there was a very surreal moment, because Al and Yvonne and Pat and myself were at the restaurant. And Edward Herman, and what are the chances of Edward Herman coming in as Herman? It just freaked me out. But he did the best, I think he did the best Herman Munster imitation of all of them. I mean, and not taking away from Jeff Daniel Phillips with Rob Zombie's version, but Edward Herman did a really good Herman Munster.
Okay, right here.
So the question I had, I guess both of you could weigh in on this, but both of the Addams Family and the Munsters theme songs are really iconic, but between the two of you, and I feel like this might be a stupid question, but is there one that you just like better?
Better theme song. Which do you like?
Oh, well, no, the Addams Family, you go to any baseball stadium, that's legendary. But as far as a studio music thing, the Munsters theme has been done a lot. Fall Out Boy a few years ago did a thing. She Wants to Dance Like Uma Thurman. Almost every garage band. I mean, when I go around the country, when I used to go out, I have never heard a band that doesn't know the riff on the lead guitar. So they always do that. So, but I think that the more famous one is the Addams Family.
And you're a musician. What songs? Which Addams Family, Munster?
I'm partial to the Addams Family, I suppose. What am I going to say? Of course I am. But they were both great. I mean, both shows were great. Both themes were great. What I really appreciate is that they were a little different. The Addams Family were weird, and they knew it. And they treated everybody with respect. They're their own family. They loved their family. They treated people well. The Munsters seemed to appreciate more that they were different, but they wanted to fit in, and they had trouble sometimes fitting in and would fight to do that. But again, they treated everybody with respect and loved their own family. I think there are several lessons in there for all of us today.